What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another live stream from the Scalar Learning Channel, and we are back at it with another action-packed J.E.D.I digital SAT training course. And today we are starting with our first ever verbal class from Dan the Man Lerman. So thank you guys so much for joining. Hold on, let me just make sure we are up. It still says waiting. Okay, hold on one second. Let me just make sure we're up and running. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, hold on. It does say connected. Give me 1 sec. Oh my God. It's not. Okay, now we're going. All right, there's just a little delay. We are good. We are good. All right. So first of all, welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining. It's amazing to see you guys all here. And for those of you guys who did join along on the August SAT journey, as we were kind of following along on that trend, that was super fun. But now we are continuing. We're rebooting, restarting with this amazing October version. So welcome everybody. And Dan, let me pass it over to you as you're going to be kind of commanding this verbal exploration.
Yeah, awesome to be here, everybody. Let's start. I would love some participation over the next couple weeks. I think it's a better way to learn. Drop in the chat where you are on the planet right now. I'm calling in from Los Angeles. Josef and I are both LA based. We are very excited to reach people all over the world. We did this over the summer. We're working with people in Bangladesh, in Africa, in England. It was just so fun to be able to do that. So excited to do it again. We've got Osiaro calling in from Nigeria. Oh, yeah. So keep those coming. And also, over the next couple of minutes, as I kind of talk about the verbal section, my approach to it, how to tackle it, if you have any dying, like lingering questions, like, oh, I cannot figure out how to read those damn graphs, drop those in the chat as well. I'm always going to come here, guys, prepared with plenty of material. I mean, I could talk about this stuff in my sleep, but I want to tailor it for this group. So the people that are the most active on the message boards and in the chat, you can help sway what we talk about, which should be fun and hopefully useful to you. All right, got some more answers coming in. Brianna from Jamaica, welcome. Pepper from Ghana, yes. Franco from Honduras. We're all over. Scalar, all over the world. Does Scalar have a like a tagline, Josefa?
No, not really. Well, at the end of every video, I always say, "Take it easy." Some people, I guess, say that's the tagline.
Yeah. Was that on purpose, or that just popped up for you?
Just popped up. Yeah,
Take
just
it
what I
easy.
say.
Okay, I like that. I feel like it's on brand for you. Okay, so guys, you're here to get some value. I'm here to hopefully over deliver what you expected from today's session. I want to talk about the verbal section where I want to start. Why don't we actually look through an SAT? And I'll tell you how my mind looks at these tests. And then today you'll see on the schedule, we're going to talk about classifying problems. I'm going to talk about sentence structure and punctuation. I'm going to give you a very clear, concise way of learning all of the comma rules in the English language. Commas are a big part of this test. But I want to start by looking at the digital SAT. I'm going to share my screen. And you are welcome to look along. I'm just going to go DSAT Test 1 PDF. And I know this is a little bit different than downloading the Blue Book software and doing the digital one, but there's a big overlap. Most of these questions are from the Blue Book, and I'll just use this one so I can scroll up and down and we can look at all the questions at once. So here's what I want you to notice. Josef and I, we've been doing the digital SAT as long as they've been out, a little over a year now. And we're still forming opinions on how to talk about this stuff, but we've come a long way. And here's what I want you to notice. When you start the test, right away, you've got reading and writing module 1. And the first questions are these vocab, what I call word choice questions. And they test your ability to put a word in a sentence. They also test your vocabulary a little bit. Sometimes the words are tricky, like fabricates. Sometimes they're repudiates. That's a tough one. Sometimes they're fairly straightforward, like doubts. Most of you know what that means. And those questions, I'm going to refer to those as word choice questions. Those are not the focus of today's class. We'll get there next week. Then you get through those questions and you get to some reading questions. What's the main purpose of the text, function of the text as a whole? In my experience, these questions are the hardest part of the verbal SAT because no one is reading nowadays. And if you're in here and you know that's true of you, it's okay. I've got you. I'll teach you some stuff about reading. But that tends to be challenging if you're not reading in your spare time. Okay. The hard part, sometimes reading poetry from 1910 where the word mirth is in there. What does that even mean? Mirth? Are you kidding me? I'll teach you how to deal with that. That'll come in weeks 3 and 4. We'll go into reading. So there's reading. There's some data, some sciencey reading, a lot of those questions. And then we get to the focus of what we're going to talk about today, which is the grammar. There's some pronouns, there's some more pronouns, there's some punctuation, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to end today's class, if timing goes to plan, with a speed run of these questions on Module 1, Test 1. I'll just show you how to do them as quickly as I can and as accurately as I can, which I should get everything right. I've done this test before. But that will be the plan for today. So knowing the structure of the SAT and how these 4 classes are going to shake out, these 4 verbal classes, that's where I wanted to start today. Good. It's good to see some. Cole is back, familiar face. Welcome. It is good to see you, Cole. All right. So let's dive in. I want to teach you guys a framework that I think it's going to be helpful. So structure is really helpful in dealing with any type of question. Like Huzefa, when he talks about math, he breaks it down, obviously, to algebra, geometry, numbers, and then there are subcategories to that. In today's class, I want to start introducing some classification, some structure for you guys, and we'll build on that over the coming weeks. So where we're going to start are the 4 most common grammar question types: sentence structure and punctuation, verbs, pronouns, and modifiers. If you are someone who takes notes, go ahead and take these down. They're not going anywhere. You got to know them. If you're someone who takes screenshots, go ahead and take a screenshot now. These are the 4. I'm going to give you an intro to these. I'll give you the facts, the technique behind each of these. I think we'll actually have time to get through all of these today, and then I'll do that speed run. So first, let's talk about type 1, sentence structure and punctuation. This is the most common type by far, and I want you to reflect on this. What's the shortest sentence in the English language? I'll start. I walked to the park. By word count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 words. Can you come up with a shorter sentence by word count? 4 or fewer words? If you can, drop it in the chat. Can you come up with a shorter sentence than I walked to the park? Yeah, I walked. Just 2 words. That's a sentence. And you know what? Even walk. If I say walk, that's also a sentence. So what is a sentence? Take a moment to think about that, because there are a lot like things that are collections of words that are way longer than 1, 2, or 5 words. I could have a 7-word collection that's not a sentence. If I say, for example, although I walked to the park, that's not a sentence. So first, we need to know what a complete sentence is. Another screenshot moment here. A sentence has a subject, a verb, and a complete thought. It can be taught a couple of different ways. This is the way I like. Subject is a thing that is doing the verb, and a complete thought. Well, we'll talk about complete thought in a second, but because I walk, although I walk, even though the newscaster recommend that I walk to work instead of take the bus, these are all not complete sentences. They're what I'll call dependent clauses, because they depend on something else to complete a sentence. So here's another moment where there's be a lot of screenshots today, guys. This is some good stuff, efficient stuff I'm giving you. Independent clause, a collection of words that can stand on its own. Dependent clause, a collection of words that cannot stand on its own. Another way of stating this is an independent clause has a subject, verb, complete thought. A dependent clause is missing at least one of those things. So let's practice this. I'm going to give you all a minute to try and tell if each of these is a dependent or an independent clause. Where this is going is it's going to help you figure out how to use commas correctly, which is a big part of this test. But we'll start dependent versus independent clause. I'll give you 1 minute, cue the music. We don't have a DJ today, so there'll be no music. Still working on the DJ, not in the budget yet for this free offering. 1 minute to try these. Okay, take another 15 seconds. Get as far as you can. All right, let's walk through these. So, the man who talked on the phone with me during last year's hurricane. Dependent clause. It's not complete. Even though it looks like it's got a subject and maybe even a verb, it kind of looks like a verb. There's no complete thought. You're waiting for something to happen. The man who talked with me on the phone during last year's hurricane went to bed. That is an independent clause. So first one, dependent clause. Second one, our tour group, which was comprised of individuals from all over the world, was often described as eclectic. Yes, independent clause. It's got a subject, verb, complete thought. So dependent, independent. Although she was a fearless navigator, Amelia Earhart ultimately perished in the wake of her adventurous spirit. That is an independent clause. It's got it all, folks. Number 4, just a small town girl living in a lonely world. Wow. The Journey song. He's quoting Journey, folks. How fun is this? There's a subject. There's actually no verb here. Living is not a verb. It's part of a verb. You could say Dan is living in LA, but you can't say Dan living in LA. So dependent clause here. We like to party, independent clause. Jump, independent clause. Implied subject of you. In this command tense, you jump is the implied subject, considered an independent clause. And then this is from a real ACT a couple of years ago. Last year, one of our school's exchange students named Ligi Antolines, who came from Bucaramanga, Colombia. A lot of words there, folks. But it's a dependent clause. There's no complete thought. So hopefully you're starting to get your head around being able to label collections of words as independent or dependent. And this leads us to what I think is going to be the most valuable thing I teach you this week, which is how to use commas. And I'll start by saying the golden rule of commas is don't use them. I'll repeat that because it's so essential. The golden rule of commas says don't use them unless you have to. Well, when do you have to? When do you have to use commas? There's certain situations that call for commas, but every other situation you don't use them. If I say, I am tall, no need for a comma there. You just say it. So the golden rule, don't use commas. When do commas pop up? When are they required? So another power slide here. I'll give you a minute. We'll cue the non-existent music. And I want you to think, where would I put commas in each of these 8? Each of these 8 is a unique comma case. Different reason for each one of them, which is why I like this list. I'm pretty proud of it. The theme of these 8 is America. You have 1 minute to place your commas.
And Dan, super quick before I saw a quick question that was a really good question pop up from Maisha. It says, is practicing questions from the Princeton Review enough for the reading and writing, verbal, or should I start practicing from the College Board questions?
Yeah, great question. I'm curious about your thoughts too, Josefa. I think the best materials are the official materials. Honestly, I used to work for Kaplan. I got paid $20 an hour, and I was not a good tutor, and I wrote questions for them. Right? So I was like, imagine who's writing the Princeton Review questions, like 20-year-olds that are barely older than you guys, that have barely higher SAT scores than you guys, and they're writing bad questions. The College Board questions are legit. They're real. I understand that we don't have infinite tests, but I personally would recommend going to the College Board questions. And Josefa knows a lot about other companies that give Good. Do you want to say a couple of words about that? Who's
Yeah.
ever where you go after the College Board?
Yeah, for 100%. And I think now again, I'm more dialed in on the math side, but I imagine the same will translate as well to these other resources in terms of the verbal side. But I'll say this: what Dan is saying is exactly right. It takes a lot of attention to detail, and you really got to know the College Board style inside and out to be able to replicate and write comparable problems. It's a lot harder than you think. You see, even Khan Academy, who has an official partnership with the College Board, misses the mark many times. And I know that they have their own team of people that write questions, and sometimes there's oversight from the College Board, sometimes not. That's why we see them sort of diverge from the standard protocol. So anyways, what I would say is if you're looking for practice test materials, I have actually looked at the Princeton review stuff. I have one of my students that has been using some of the material. I think it's fine. We also have a lot of other resources from the SAT crash course. That's a great resource for full-length practice tests. They're about to bang out 6 more practice tests as well, which is super cool. We have something called Score Smart. For math questions in particular, where you want to drill and kill on particular problem types, I would recommend Math Chops. You know what? I'm going to make a resources page on the school platform. So I will, this is a really great question. I'm going to post that up there. And by the way, that reminds me, if you guys haven't signed up yet, there's the link, our new link, our new URL for the school platform. All right, Dan, I'm going to pass it back over to you. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I like how casually you dropped the term drill and kill in there. The first time I've heard you drop that, Jose. Very cool. I want to, before we get back to the commas, I probably should have started with this, but I want to show you, if you're not in the school community, I don't know what you're doing. It's free. We have a big group from across the world. Jose and I are in here. I have some unread DMs. I'll get to those, but I respond like, this is where you want to be for the resources and the people that are seeing the biggest score jumps. Like Cole is in here every week. He had to bounce this week, but he's going to watch the recording. They're seeing monster scores. Like you can see, I'm not going to out people and tell people tell people scores, but check the message boards. If you get involved on the school community, you will see results. So go ahead and join it. The webinars, being part of the message board, it's totally free. Please get on there. Jose, drop the link in there. Just go ahead and click it. Cool. All right. So I'll get back to commas and then keep dropping questions as they pop into your head in the chat. I'll pause in maybe 5-10 minutes or so to address the rest of the questions. I'm already seeing some good ones popping. Okay. So check this. Where do the commas go? I thought I had a slide in here with the answers. I guess we'll just have to talk through the answers. So many Americans like to go to church, eat McDonald's, and watch football. Why? List. For a list, you have commas that separate the items in the list. That's just how it works, folks. 2, I hate the Wendy's Baconator, but he loves the Wendy's Baconator. This is not a list. It's different. There's a comma separating an independent clause. From an independent clause, it's a comma plus what's called a fanboys conjunction. The words for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Those are connectors with a comma between 2 independent clauses. By the way, in just a second, I'll show you all these so you can take a screenshot. I wouldn't take the screenshot yet. Running towards home plate, he suddenly realized they lost the game. That's a dependent clause. You're tacking on running towards home plate to the independent clause. So anytime you tack on a dependent clause to an independent clause, you need a comma. For the fireworks, which happen every 4th of July, were glorious. That is parenthetical. There's a comma after fireworks. There's a comma after July. It's extra information. 5, John Adams said, we must rebel. When someone's speaking, you need a comma. 6, the Declaration of Independence was first signed on July 4th, 1776. Dates to separate the day and the year. 7, the obese, obstinate American was all over TV. That separates 2 coordinate adjectives working together. And 8, I was born in New York, USA. This is a true fact about Dan Lerman. I'm a New Yorker at heart. Geography is that last one. So when are commas used? This is the power slide, folks. I don't think anyone, ChatGPT, the internet, I don't think anyone teaches it this concisely. These are all of the comma uses in the English language. The top 4 are much more common on the SAT and the ACT than the bottom 4. So I call these the major comma rules. The bottom ones do pop up, but not that often. So I still recommend learning all of them. I still recommend having this in your brain and knowing how they're used. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second because this is just so good and I just wanted to let it set in. Every comma use ever is one of these 8. I'll pause for questions before we move on. All right, let's see. What do we got? Okay, good. What's the best resource to increase score from 500 to 750 in reading in 3 months? Very vague question there. I mean, I appreciate the question, but if you're thinking just in terms of numbers, the first thing I would do is make a diagnosis. Like, what's happening? Why are you scoring 500? And by the way, I'm not shaming you for 500. I've seen way lower scores, but 500, you're missing a lot of questions at 500, a ton of questions. Are they coming from grammar? Are they coming from like the word choicey type questions? Or are they coming from reading? I would bet most people just don't read nowadays. I would bet if you're scoring a 500, there's no world in which you're a great elite reader and scoring a 500. So in that case, I would say really commit to having an experience when you read. Tune in week 3. I'll show you how to become a great reader overnight. It doesn't take long to learn the skills to be a good reader. I just don't think they're taught that well. So I would start there. You got to know your grammar as well. So look in the mirror. What are the skills you don't have? And then, this course will give you at least the intro to all of those skills. Good. What else? Any other questions we should answer right now? Resources. Yeah. This group. I love this group. You guys are badasses. And you probably need to, I understand at the end of the day, it's a numbers game. I don't have a magic pill for you guys. It's like, oh yeah, to get to a 700, all you have to do is read my one article. I would imagine if you're at a 600 on verbal, like same thing. You're not reading at an elite level. You're falling apart on poems. So start by looking inwards. What kinds of questions are you missing? And bring those questions that are going to be better questions than these to this group. Next question is probably another score question? Okay, I actually do like this one a little better. I still think it's not a great question. And I do love you guys. It's okay that you're asking like surface level questions. Let's get deeper questions as we continue to get to know each other and you continue to get to know yourselves. But I like Nick's question because he's trying to figure out from 610 to 680, how does that compare to 680 to 750? In my experience, I think, let me think about this for a second. And on verbal, I do think 610 to 680 is easier than 680 to 750. Generally speaking, 610, you don't really know your comma rules. You're kind of tune out. You get bored on the reading. And you're not using like basic test taking techniques. So, you learn your commas, you become at least passable at reading, and you stay calm throughout the test. You're at a 680. 680 to 750 is almost entirely technique. It's when you get to that hard science passage that's about rocks and you really don't want to read about rocks. To take a deep breath, to visualize, to stay calm, to skip and come back. A lot of the technique that we're going to cover in probably week 4 of this class. So I do think 680 to 750 is harder. And does it take more study hours? I would say yes.
And I'd love to just chime in on the math side too. And by the way, you mentioned those breathing techniques. That's my one student who rocked out really, really well on the August, got her highest math score ever. And she talked about how well she was able to kind of utilize those breathing techniques to keep herself calm in the wake of, different problem types and stuff. So that was amazing to hear that was really successful. But I will say, like, on the math side, it's the way that I described the jump from 610 to 680, it's somewhat similar to what Dan's saying on the verbal side. But Yeah, for sure. That 70-point jump is easier than the 680 to 750. And I'll tell you why on the math side, because in particular, I know it's a verb. I'm going to say this really quickly, but basically 610 to 680 sounds like you're probably going to be missing some key fundamentals, some formulas. That's just going to be straight memorization and application versus those higher points, 680 to 750. Moreover, actually really 750 to 800 would really be where this last type of problem type comes in, but it's where you're going to have the hybrid problems. So it's going to be partially a quadratic, partially maybe a circle problem, partially special right triangles all merged together. And then that's where you're going to need a little bit more creativity to plug and play with some of these abstract concepts. So that's when it comes down to terrific fluidity, being able to pull in all these different formulas and combine them together. So that's what I would say on the math side. You're really going to have super, super strong fundamentals so you can be creative on the fly. Okay.
Love it. Yeah, great answer. Cool. Okay, good. So I love this question. Yes, semicolons do show up on the SAT. I'm going to go over those in the next 3 minutes. Hell yeah, let's do it. So let's get back to it. Let's see. Okay, so one thing that, we just talked about the 8 correct uses of commas. There is an incorrect use of commas that happens so often that actually has a name. I hate ketchup, comma, he loves ketchup. This is actually illegal. It's an independent clause, comma, independent clause. You can't do that, folks. It's called a comma splice. So this gets fixed one of 3 different ways. You can have a period between the 2 independent clauses. You can have a semicolon between the 2 independent clauses. So the first use of semicolons, there's 2. The first use is to separate 2 independent clauses just like a period. You may be thinking, well, what if there's one choice that has a period and another choice that has a semicolon? They're exactly the same, so they're probably both wrong. And then finally, I hate ketchup, comma, but. So you can keep the comma. You just need to throw in that fanboys conjunction. For, and, but, nor, or. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. But he loves ketchup. So this is how to fix a comma splice. So I'm actually going to bounce around a little bit here to give you guys what I think will be the most helpful. So let's talk about the other punctuation, the rest of type 1 questions, and then we'll get to verbs. So the semicolon, independent clause, as we just talked about. There's actually another semicolon rule here, guys, that's advanced. I teach this to my kids who are like in the 700 range, going for the 700 range, because this is a concept that only started popping up on the SAT a couple of years ago, and it was kind of rare before that. But it's called a serial list. It's separating the items in a list when the list already has commas. So I have lived in New York, comma, New York, Washington, comma, DC, London, UK, and Los Angeles. This is a true fact, by the way. I'm proud of the places I've lived, cool places. The issue with the commas to separate the items in the list is there's already other commas, and that's just too many commas. There's just too many of them. So it's kind of visually appealing. It looks better to use the semicolon. That's called a serial list. This popped up, I think, on one of digital SAT, one of the ones I was doing recently, popped up twice in a module. This exact use of semicolons for the serial list. So I would for sure know that one as well. So that's it. Semicolon use 1, independent clause, semicolon list 2, separate the items in the serial list. Let's look at the rest of the punctuation quickly. A colon. People misuse the colon all the time. Colon is used for an independent clause leading up to an example, explanation, or list. Notice I put this one in red, meaning it's a bad use. I love listening to rock, jazz, and funk. There is no independent clause here, folks. So that's wrong. I love listening to all sorts of music, colon, rock, jazz, and funk. Now it's used correctly. That's the colon. Let's check the dash. 2 uses for the dash. 1 for parenthetical commas, 2 for a dramatic pause. So onto the stage came, against my wishes, a rabbit squirrel, just like parenthetical commas, extra information. You could also use a dash just to create a dramatic pause. He entered the room and said, hello, something like that. Cool. And then apostrophes. They can be used as a possessive or a contraction. So it's not you're going to pay for that. It's you are going to pay for that. And that apostrophe is called a contraction. And this brings up some apostrophe questions can be tricky because people don't know when to use them, having to do with singular, possessive. So the cats are taking over the block. The cats, apostrophe S, the cats, these are all right. They just serve different functions. So if it's plural, no apostrophe. If it's apostrophe S, it's singular and possessive. And if it's S apostrophe, it's plural and possessive. People get stuck on the irregulars. So it's is on, I think, every SAT ever. IT apostrophe S is a contraction. You would expect the apostrophe to be possessive, but since it's already taken here by the contraction, the possessive has no apostrophe. That is weird, and it's worth knowing. It's worth thinking about. So check this. The dog wagged its tail. The tail belongs to its. It's possessive, proving that it's easier to get along with dogs than cats. Okay. Who is a contraction. Whose is possessive. Who is responsible for figuring out whose hoodie this is? These are the irregulars. These are the hard parts. I would review its and whose before you take your next test. Okay, that was an absolutely rapid fire, as quick as I can go, intro to sentence structure and punctuation. Let's look at the second type of question, which is verbs. And these are totally different. Two types of verb questions. One, pick the right tense. Two, subject verb agreement. So let's start. LeBron is taller. LeBron had been tall. Which one would you prefer? Well, the SAT just prefers the simple one, simple present. And you have to know three simple tenses on this test. You need to know the past, the present, and the future. Most of us that speak English know past, present, and future in their simple forms, but let's look at the complex tenses you need to know. So check this out. This is called the past perfect tense. I had tutored for 16 years, and take a second to think about, what does this mean, had tutored? And you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, you use this when you're talking about something that happened in the past, and even before that. I had tutored for 16 years before I retired. It means I'm done tutoring, it's over. Versus I have tutored for 16 years. This is called the present perfect. And it means I started in the past and I'm still doing it. Notice the subtle difference. I had tutored versus I have tutored versus I would have tutored for 16 years. In this case, I have never tutored. This is just a hypothetical idea. So these three complex tenses, the past perfect, the present perfect, and the conditional, are also tested on the SAT. These are all the verb tenses you need to know. And let me take a second here. I'm going to bounce around a little bit. In addition to knowing all the verb tenses, you need to match singular subjects with singular verbs and plural subjects with plural verbs. So these are actually really hard. I'm going to give you a minute to try these. Notice two different verbs. One is singular, one is plural. We'll talk about which one in a second. I'll give you a minute to try to get the answers to these three really hard questions. And I'm going to grab a quick snack in the meantime because I've been talking a lot today and I'm feeling lightheaded. I'll be back in 1 minute as you guys try this.
And guys, make sure to post what you're finding in the chat. So if you have an idea for what the subject is, make sure to post that. Let's see what you got.
All right, folks, I'm back. I just got so many good snacks. That might be noshing a little bit. We'll start with the banana. All right, so check it out. People in France enjoy snails. First thing is, what's the subject? Is it people or is it France? And notice people is plural, France is singular. The subject is actually people because in France describes the people. It's called a modifier. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So if people is singular, you have to pick the singular verb. And to do that, I use the he, they test. So he enjoy or he enjoys. Oh, he enjoys. So this is actually the singular verb. People, sorry, he enjoys. Okay, but people was plural. So, sorry, did I say singular? People is plural. There's multiple people. So they enjoy snails. The right answer here is actually enjoy because people is plural, enjoy is plural. This one, the difficulty goes up because what's the subject? Is it fragments? Is it primate? Is it jawbone? It's actually fragments because of a primate jawbone describes the fragments. And fragments is plural. Are is plural. Fragments are discovered on a daily basis. I think C is the hardest one. Is it friends? Is it not? Is it one? The subject is actually one. Of my friends describes one. Not also is based on what you can't just say not describes one. So one is the subject, one is singular. What's the singular verb? He calls. Oh yeah, not one of my friends calls me anymore. Ooh, tricky one. There are the answers. The point is they make you on the SAT match up subjects and verbs and make them both singular or both plural. So I think that's all I've got. Yeah, to sum up verbs before we move on to pronouns and modifiers, pick the right tense and make the subject and verb agree. That's kind of the game plan for verbs. I'll pause. I'm going to check the questions.
Is that you with the nunchucks?
Yeah, of course. That's me at your age, at high school senior. I got real into nunchuck. No, I did think that was cool though. Canva. Oh yeah, dude.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I don't think there are any questions. Those are hard. If you're, having trouble with them, feel free to ask some stuff. What's up?
We've got one from Sarah. Can I practice doing breathing techniques on a practice test? I often get stressed and my brain freezes up sometimes.
Yeah. I didn't really go into my background today, but I am a certified performance coach and I do stand-up comedy. I do a lot of performance in my life. I think Sarah's question is really important, like knowing how to breathe and how to deal with stress is a huge part of performance, a huge part of this test. So maybe my fourth week, I was kind of unsure if I was going to go deeper into hard reading. I'll actually take some dedicated time to talk about this and really highlight the importance of how stress works and how stress can mess you up. To answer before week 4, Sarah's question, yes, you can practice doing breathing techniques on a practice test. I recommend, I don't know where you are in the world, Sarah, I recommend getting out of the house. Some places in the US at least have test centers where you can go practice a mock test. I recommend going to the library, getting out of your house, doing whatever you can to feel a little bit of pressure on your practice test. And then breathing, very simply, I recommend breathing after you punch in every answer. So punch in D. Next question. You'll see in my live taking of Blue Book Test 6, which is on the Scalar Learning channel. Jose, maybe you want to drop the link. I think one of the top comments is, man, this guy breathes a lot. And it's true. I'm doing it in real time. And you got to feed your brain in order to think on a high level. So many people, when they get stressed, just stop breathing and it's like choking off the brain. So yes, I recommend practicing the breathing, having a game plan going in. A very simple one is just breathe after every question, after every bubble. And I think the stress, I really appreciate you bringing that up because I think it's a really big part of performing at a high level.
Those are in the chat, by the way, guys. So
yeah,
I just posted them.
Cool. Franco asks, what would be a good way to practice these grammar rules in the context of the SAT? I'll show you, but we got to keep moving so I get there. Okay, let's go. So let's get to pronouns real quick. I'm going to fast forward a little bit because I want to get to the actual test. So pronouns. Every pronoun needs a clear antecedent that matches a number. The word antecedent is a fancy word for what the pronoun refers back to. So if I say he, what does he refer back to? If I say she, what does she refer back to? I think I'll pull up an example. Here's a good example. Okay, so you notice there are pronouns here: our, one's, his, her, their. What is the antecedent here? Because today's students can expect to hold multiple jobs. Oh, during it, it's the lifetime of today's students. That's plural. So the only plural antecedent here is their. Their lifetime is the right answer here. So that's the deal with pronouns, and we'll look at it in the context of the digital SAT in a second. One big question type before we get to like my speed run is that people just don't know how to do these questions. Most people that I've encountered don't even know what modifiers are. So let me just say, modifiers simply describe. This is a money slide. Write this down. You got to know that modifiers simply describe. What does that look like? Well, Danny Eats Pizza has no modifiers. There's no describing in there. Danny's Cold Pizza has one modifier. It is cold, which describes pizza. Danny's Cold Pizza, reheated to perfection with a new technique taught to him by his friend Rick. All of the things in color are modifiers. Modifiers are like the spice of the English language. And if you think about it, or just notice how you process language, there's a rule with modifiers. And the rule is noun modifiers must touch their nouns. I'll say that again because it's so important. Noun modifiers must touch their nouns. Cold describes pizza, not Dan, because it touches it. Noun modifiers must touch their nouns. There's what I just said. Okay, so let's look at a question. A lot of people can't get this question. Some people can't get it, or they can get it, but they don't know why. Very few people can get it right and explain why. So I'll give you, maybe 30 seconds to try and get to the right answer and figure out why you got to the right answer. What's the rule? Okay, let's talk about it. So, what is going on here? After moving to Ryukon in 2001 is a modifier. It describes someone, right? The prolonged winter gloom can't really move to a city. I guess it kind of can, but that's not what's going on here. It's the artist Martin Anderson who moved. And that is a noun. So since noun modifiers need to touch their nouns, after moving to Ryukon in 2001, you have to put artist Martin Anderson directly after that. So that means the answer is H. This idea is called, noun modifiers must touch their nouns. And it's a huge one. It's popping up more and more on the digital SAT. And I'm going to skip forward to one more example of it. See if you can get this one right, this time knowing exactly why. So take 30, 45 seconds to try it. Okay, that feels like enough time. Okay, same thing going on here, guys. Possessing less wealth than settlers from Europe or other parts of the United States. Guys, horses can't possess less wealth. This is wrong. So who can possess less wealth? Oh, I guess it's many exodusters, which sounds like it's some sort of people. So it's C because noun modifiers need to touch their nouns. So now to the golden kind of idea, the golden question of the day, which is like how to use this in context. So these four, I want these to be in your mind. Sentence structure and punctuation, verbs, pronouns, modifiers. Let's go to an actual test and see how my brain works. And basically what you're going to see is a 3-step process. Let me actually throw this on the screen for a second. You could ignore tip 4. That's from a different presentation. But IRA is this process that I use. And what does IRA stand for? It stands for identify, reason, answer. So my flow every time I'm going into a test on grammar, identify, reason, answer. Identify, reason, answer. Let me show you what that means. So let's go to module 1 on digital SAT test 1. And we'll go to the first grammar question. So I see number 19. And the first thing I do is I try and figure out which of those 4 I'm looking at. They, one, you, it. Which of those 4 is it, guys? You can drop it in the chat. You can think to yourself. Is it sentence structure and punctuation? Is it verbs? Is it pronouns? Is it modifiers? This looks like pronouns, folks. And then I try and reason my way to an answer. I don't answer it yet. I come up with a reason. So I read. Japan achieved a 40% reduction in plastic bag use after cashiers were instructed to ask customers whether blank wanted a bag. Oh, yeah, it's what I was talking about before. Customers is the antecedent, so it has to be they, right? And I'll do it again kind of slowly. On the next question, I'll do IRA, and then I'm going to start my speed run where I'm just going to go off to the races, okay? So number 20, first thing I do is the I. I identify, oh, this is a sentence structure and punctuation question. Then I start to reason. Epicurus defined pleasure. I usually do read the whole thing, by the way, just for this purposes of this class. I'm not going to do that. Epicurus defined pleasure as the absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the soul, positing that all of life's virtues derive from this absence. I'm going to say comma to tack on a dependent clause, so it's got to be A. Notice I, then R, then A. So to answer, it was a great question from before. Franco said, what's a good way to practice these grammar rules in the context of the SAT? Use IRA, identify, then reason, then answer. Let's do it. I'm about to eat my pistachios, take a swig of my Topo Chico, and then do the rest of these as fast as I can. See if you can keep up. Okay, number 21, definitely a pronouns question. Blank findings were based on famous X-ray image. Oh, who does that refer back to? It's Watson and Crick. There, plural, C. 22. Ooh, a fun one. Sentence structure and punctuation. I am going to start with the golden rule of commas, which means don't use commas. Let's see. But never a heroine finally got a starring role in Paramount Pictures' Daughter of Shanghai, a film that critic Stina Chine claims, quote, expanded the range of possibilities for Asian images on screen. Guys, this is a golden rule of commas question. There are no commas needed. There's no list. There's no dependent clause. It looks maybe like she's speaking, but actually she's not. This is just a quote of hers. She's not actually speaking, so no comma needed. The answer is C. Ooh, I love that question. That's a good one. Notice my body took over, just took a breath. It's like you're going fast. Yes, I'm going fast, but I need to reset my brain. Okay, this is a verbs question. What's my reasoning? In 1637, the price of tulips skyrocketed, single bulb of rare varieties, equivalent of $200,000 in today's US dollars. Some historians blank that this tulip mania was the first Historical instance. So I need something either in the present tense, claim, or claimed. It could be just past tense. Definitely not claiming. Be claim, having claim, to claim. Yeah, you might even consider this a sentence structure question because the only one that makes it a complete sentence is be. Done. 24. Type 1. Researchers studying magnetosensitization. I think this one, if I remember, I haven't done this one in a while, but I think you really have to read it to get it. Otherwise, it's hard. So I recommend reading deeply, especially when you get stuck, but read deeply on all these questions. I'll talk more about that in week 3. Why some soil-dwelling roundworms in the southern hemisphere move in the opposite direction of Earth's magnetic field when searching for food. End of thought. In the northern hemisphere, the magnetic field points down into the ground, but in the southern hemisphere, it points up towards the surface and away from the worm's food sources. I think there's probably going to be a colon here because it's introducing an example, explanation, or list. In this case, it's an explanation. Okay, colon, that looks good. Comma doesn't work. That would be a comma splice. While there needs to be some sort of punctuation. So A. 5. Pronouns. Turtle barnacles can dissolve to the cement-like secretions they use to attach themselves. You attach yourself to a sea turtle shell, so it's B. Verbs. In both games, player encounter good or bad spaces while traveling along a path. Landing on one of the good spaces, blank a player to skip ahead and arrive closer to the end goal. This looks like it's in the present tense, arrive. So I'm going to say allows. Allows is my thought. So landing on one of the good spaces. The subject is landing on one of the good spaces. It's singular. It's one idea. Allows is he allows. Yes. Okay. It's A. Type 1. Hopper's subsequent career would involve more than just equations, though. As a pioneering computer programmer, Hopper would help usher in the digital age. Yeah, this is an explanation. It's going to require a colon. We've got an independent clause before. So comma, though, and a colon, it's going to be A. Oh, 28. What type is it? Oh, it looks to me like a modifiers question. I didn't really say this, but how do I pick up on modifiers questions? A lot of times the word order is swapped, right? Henry's here, he's there, he's there. This is modifiers. Oh, I love this question. Upon recovering 2 years later, that's a modifier. What has to come next? It's going to be Henry. It looks like A and C both have that, but if you look closer, Henry's, the apostrophe S, it's not actually Henry, it's Henry's reign. So A is the right answer here. Very good. And then we get to a different question type, which I call transition questions. I'll cover that next week. So that's all of the questions on Module 1 for grammar. I'll pause for a second if anyone wants to revisit these or has questions about how I approached these and got them all right. I'll take them now. Otherwise, I'll go to Module 2. I'll chill for one more second. All right, let's do Module 2. IRA. Identify, reason. Answer. Let's check it. Okay, this seems like the first one. I identify this as a verbs question. The award-winning book is Harris's first novel, but her writing, I guess, has been I think you need the past or the present perfect, like something in the past. It can't just be the past. And also the plural. Writing is singular. Her writing, that's what's going on here. It's singular versus plural. So writing is singular. A is plural, no. B is plural, no. C is singular, yes. D is plural. Okay, it's C. This looks like a type 1 sentence structure and punctuation. They maintain the secondary effects of asteroid impact caused many dinosaurs and other animals to die out. Comma, but. Oh, yeah, it's the comma fanboys use of commas, so it's in fact B. Having that list of comma uses in my head, guys, it's priceless because I know which of the 8 should I be using here. Okay, 21. Verbs. Those food sources may become available because of extensive snow and ice cover. Blank. Oh, I need to read this whole thing. Okay. Although the monkeys prefer to eat vegetation and land-dwelling invertebrates, those food sources may become unavailable because of extensive snow and ice cover. Okay, so far I've got a dependent clause, an independent clause, and then this part has to be a dependent clause. You can't have an independent clause, comma, independent clause. Which of these will make the second part, or this last part, whatever you want to call it, into a dependent clause? It's forcing. C. 22. Sentence structure and punctuation. If the plants were grown in alkaline soil alongside grasses that aid in iron solubilization, blank, Mikhail was determined to find out. Feels like you need a question here. The blueberries could thrive? That's weird. Could the blueberries thrive? That's the question that sets up this last sentence. Good. I is verbs. Today, Pake blank considered the first video artist. Well, today means present tense. I have to use present tense. Will be is future. Had been is something in the past. Was is past. He is. D is the answer to 23. Breath. Sentence structure and punctuation. Dan Bricklin's VisiCalc improve financial record keeping not only by providing users with an easy means of adjusting data in spreadsheets, but also by automatically updating all calculations that were dependent on these adjustments. End of idea. Prior to VisiCalc's release, okay, so we need maybe a period after adjustments and prior. Not going to be A, can't be B, that's a comma splice. C is what I want, and D needs some sort of punctuation. So it is C here. 25. The lock would increase the salinity of the lakes, and the lock would increase. Increase, we probably need present tense. This is singular, so we need something that's parallel to increase. Create. Create. B, because you need a singular verb. The lock. Oh, not singular. It's in this hypothetical, this conditional tense. Would increase and would create. Oh, that's a tricky one. So you need the verb tense that matches increase here. Nice. 26. Modifiers. Despite being cheap, versatile, and easy to produce, what has to come next? Plastics. Some sort of mention of plastics. Not A, not B. C looks like it could be right, but so does D. Oh, and I look closer, and plastics has an apostrophe on it. So it's not commercial plastics apostrophe, it's commercial plastics that has to come next. Noun modifiers must touch their nouns. It's D. Okay, looks like we have one more. Here we go. Type 1, sentence structure and punctuation. Stomata, tiny pore structures in a leaf that absorb gases needed for plant growth, open when guard cells surrounding each pore cell swell with water. In a pivotal 2007 article, plant cell, I'm going to use golden rule of commas. Biologist Yuri Lee showed, no need for commas here, guys. There's none of the 8 rules popping up. So C is the right answer. This is, on test 1, this is probably the question I get asked about most because people want to put commas in there. But look at your list. Get that list in your brain. There's no dependent clause here. There's no quotes. None of those 8 rules apply. So start with no commas. All right. Woo, my brain. That's intense every time. I just want to take one moment to reflect on that experience, and hopefully, I know we're going at a fast pace here, guys, because with 4 classes, we're trying to give you as much content as possible. The one major takeaway, even if some of that felt overwhelming, is you need a process. When you get stuck, when you're nervous, you fall back to your process. So can you make IRA part of your process? Can you make that your process? And can you get those 4 types, sentence structure and punctuation, verbs, pronouns, modifiers? Can you get that into your brain as well? So I'll pause there. Any last questions, I'll take them. But otherwise, we'll do a quick review of this next week, and I'll push you into a couple of new question types.
So awesome. Thank you, Dan, so much. Guys, I hope you appreciated that and enjoyed that. A lot of cool stuff on applying those rules in real time. By the way, Dan did a walkthrough of practice test 1. We've already recorded it. I'm going to try and get that up ASAP as well. We'll post that on the school website very shortly. I got to run because I have a 3 p.m. I think, Dan, you basically covered everything you wanted to hit,
Everything
right?
I wanted to cover. Yeah.
All right. Brianna says, thank you. Well, thank you, Brianna. BJ says, save this video. This will, of course, be up on the channel. And we're going to post the replay as well on the school platform. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back for week 2 next week. Math on Monday. Back again with verbal on Wednesday and repeat. Make sure to check out the assignments as well. Those have been posted on the school website as well. Quizzes, video replays, all that good stuff. Thank you. And we will see you in the next video.
Thanks,
Take
team.
it easy.
Ciao.
Peace.